Yo,
Hello there.
welcome, welcome, welcome.
Watching with a little Foo Fighter. Little Fighters Foo.
We are gonna get to Foo Fighters. I assume that's actually gonna be the bulk of this conversation, but we are, for today's topic, talking about the recent broadcast, the HBO broadcast of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2021 induction ceremony. Um, this just was broadcast this past Saturday, but it actually happened in real life, in real time, a few weeks back. So that's why we're talking about it today, because as I said, it was just broadcast this past Saturday evening. It was a good Saturday evening, like, because usually you'd go out to concerts and stuff like that, and if you weren't able to go out, it was nice because a whole bunch of people performed for you. So it's kind of a nice little
Mm-hmm.
gesture from HBO. So, welcome to my summer layer, Space Station Oddity. I am your host, Sammy, and I am joined with.
Music rock fans, Stephanie.
All right, that was a bit subdued
That's
today.
that's that's so generic, but it is. I was going back and listening to the Foo Fighters again from the end of the broadcast, and I'm like, and all of a sudden I'm like, I couldn't find a piece of my microphone when I should have been looking for it, and so I was a couple minutes getting late because I was busy listening to music. So
It's like you're a teenage girl again or something. Like you're gonna like run off and like I hate you or whatever and just like slam your bedroom door.
that's right. Technically, I did slam the bedroom door. I was cranky at the dog.
Oh yeah, yeah, that happens. The dog is not a big rock and roll fan. She doesn't like the rock and roll.
Well, not my dog.
Okay.
My dog loves all music. Actually, my dog doesn't really like much of anything, except me. No, I'm dog sitting for one of my neighbors, and Cosmo's sweet, sweet, sweet dog, just a ball of nervous energy that barks at his own shadow.
Oh, I see.
So I was like, yeah. So I'm like, so I took so like a little bit ago. I can shut the door, but he'll bark outside the door if I shut it on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I just took him up to his crate. I'm like, I went up to the other apartment, and I'm like, you're just gonna be in your crate for a little while. You're just gonna hang
Mm-hmm.
here, just chill better. Yeah. So it's fine. He's fine. He'll survive.
He'll survive.
He'll survive.
So we are talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and you already mentioned
Mm-hmm.
Foo Fighters, but we'll come back to the Foo Fighters because I know you're gonna you're gonna go off on the Foo Fighters. So we'll come back to that. But Foo Fighters aside, was there any particular highlights or anything that kind of stood out to you, or was like a special moment?
It's funny. I really I didn't even mean to, and I actually, I mean, I kind of took to Drew Barrymore's complete fangirling of the Go-Go's.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I didn't even really think about it. I'm like, I'm a fan of the Go-Go's, I was like, I grew up with their music. And Belinda Carlisle, all that kind of stuff. But there's one moment in, well, two moments in the podcast. We'll get to the other one in a minute because that's just me being me. But this one, she just started her speech and she shouts out, she's like, uh, do you remember the first album you ever bought? Shout it out. And I'm laughing because like she's up there to talk about the Go-Go's, right? And I'm laughing because it wasn't the Go-Go's, right? It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't I bought the Go-Go's. And I go, oh, wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
It literally happened because I was watching it on my laptop in my kitchen, and I'm like, oh wait, technically, kinda, yeah. I mean, I remember I mean, it's like I had lots of albums and cassette tapes and all that kind of stuff um, before that one, but that was the first one that and DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Oh.
Those were the first cassettes I ever bought with my own money. I remember it specifically. My grandma gave me a 20 for Christmas, and they were $8 a piece. And I got Belinda Carlisle and DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Those were my first cassettes I ever bought with my own money. It was such a big deal for me. I remember being so excited because I remember I had him in my hand. My mom had me hand the money to the guy. It was at Tower Records, and I was like so that I want to pull the plastic off, and my mom's like, "You haven't paid for them yet. Stop it." And so she's like, if you want them, you have to pay for them yourself. And I'm like shy little 8-year-old. I was like, oh, want to talk to this strange man behind the
Mm-hmm.
counter. And she's like, you got to give him the money. And I'm just like shy as ever, just like kind of like sneaking it, handing it to him. I'm like, okay, good, I paid for it. I'm opening them. But yeah, it was funny because it was like when she said that, and I was just like, wait, that was my first. And it was funny because I have not thought about that particular story it's been more than a decade easily since I thought about the story of like of when I bought my first, like that memory of my first. I was like, I hadn't thought about it in years, and all of a sudden, it like the whole thing came flooding back when she was talking about it, and I have Go-Go. I have the Go-Go's on vinyl, and like I said, I
Mm-hmm.
like their music, but I think I knew this and I just forgot or something because like it sounded familiar, but it also sounded like I was learning it for the first time. The Go-Go's got their start in punk music, like
Yeah.
punk rock.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because I'm like, I don't know why. That's just like it's like one of those things that was probably always in the back of my head, but it was not anything that I ever gave much thought to because it was just not anything I gave me thought to. It was neither here nor there. Um, but and then they started playing their music again, and then they played live, and I was like, all of a sudden it was just like this epiphany moment. I'm like, oh my god, I can actually hear the punk rock.
Yeah.
I never thought about that till right now.
Go-Go's were always kind of aggressive, not in a necessarily bad way, but just in a very punk way. Like they were like totally in your face. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was part of their charm and it was part of their appeal. Because even as a kid, like growing up, I didn't know what punk was, but I was like when you'd see like videos and stuff for the Go-Go's, even during their like quote unquote pop phase, you're like this was swagger, I guess before swagger was properly named or invented. And that's what they had. They had this kind of like in your face aggressive swagger. They were coming in like gunfighters and they were determined to like clean up the town like a sheriff. And then just kind of go on to the next thing as the tour kind of goes along. And that was kind of like really fun and confrontational. They were like a joyful confrontational.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as like, she was talking about it too, and like she full on like kind of dressed down, dressed up, what while she was on stage. I'm like, their first album cover, they were in, they're just like in towels. Like it's like it was like the most feminine, feminist, unfeminine. It's like unfeminine thing. It's like, yeah, we look like women and we're very feminine, but at the same time, it's like this is what we do to look good for all of you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just gonna share it. And it's like it wasn't any sort of glamorous cover. It wasn't sort of, it wasn't anything that was like showed them like with any sort of true sex appeal the way we think of that,
Mm-hmm.
so like what that means, what the examples are that pop into our head when we think about it. And I just I loved them growing up. But Belinda Carlisle, circle in the sand, man. I'm telling you, circles in the sand, round and round. But oh yeah, I loved that. I loved that part in particular.
But also too, I want to add like
Huh?
that Drew Barrymore's observation too of like when she asked the crowd, and you mentioned it already, which is like shout out the first record that you got. That's kind of an experience that's gone away. I don't mean to sound like an old man, but just like when you just constantly listen to Spotify all the time, there isn't that personal attachment. That story you just told, you don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of kids today don't have that story of like this prized possession
No.
or like grandma gave me money and I got this thing now, this thing I can hold in my hand, right? Like
Like, yeah. I mean, what are the stories now? It's like, oh, the very first playlist I ever put together on Spotify. You're like, okay, well, that's not,
yeah,
it's not the same.
it was kind of like that to me is also like the value of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is you keep some of that past alive, those experiences alive. There is, like you said, like special moment, this kind of like connection where you leave your suburban house and you go to a music store and the dude behind the counter is weird and he's not somebody that you kind of typically see and you get to interact with pop culture in a way that you don't get to do now. Like I know Netflix and Spotify are pop culture and consider pop culture, but the experiences we
Yeah.
had, especially because you, like you said, you were 8 years old when you first did when you bought those cassette tapes. You
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a lot. You're not going out to clubs or like punk rock clubs or anything like this. So your pop culture experiences are limited. So you have to treasure the ones that you have because you weren't going to a lot of concerts and a lot of things, and you weren't hanging out with quote unquote weird people. And so when you get an opportunity like that to go to a store and take grandma's money and buy those cassette tapes, that's a thrilling memory that you just don't get when you just push play on Spotify.
No, you're absolutely correct. It's like it made me think of like places like Warehouse, Tower Records, all that kind of stuff that's gone away. We the only place you can get that now from tiny wall vinyl shops.
Mm-hmm.
And vinyl shops have started carrying, they're record stores now. They carry CDs, they carry cassettes, they carry all that stuff. Mostly vinyls, yes, but they a lot of them that I know around here, they carry all the rest of it too. And you know, I go to Warehouse or Tower Records as a kid to buy a CD. I have a particular one I want to go get, and then while I'm there, I'm like, I see something else. I'm like, oh, I like this one song, and so I end up buying the album. And then all of a sudden, there's a whole album of songs I like, and that's not that you can't do that today. It's like if you get one song, you can just have the one song and nothing else. Although, did you hear recently what the major change that Spotify made because Adele asked them to?
They took the shuffle off.
Yes, just shuffle for albums.
Yeah.
You can't shuffle albums. And I was like, I saw that. I was like, that's big dick energy right there. That's BDE. That's straight BDE. I'm like, she's like, I don't want them shuffled. They're like, okay, Adele, we let you whatever you want. So, and I was, but yeah, you can make playlists. You can have, you can put like every year I have a playlist that is just the title of it is just the year.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I don't know what title I'm about them and I want to listen to them a bunch of times, I'll drop them in there. But it's like it's not like before when I would go and I'd be like, oh my god, I love that song that's on that album. I'm gonna grab that album, even if it's a compilation album. Compilation albums still have all the other stuff too. But I'm like, it's like I love this one song, and then all of a sudden, I think one of the best descriptions, the one best I can think of right now, is the soundtrack to City of Angels I got because of the Alanis Morissette song. But it opened up my eyes to a world of music I never listened to because there's so many different genres of music on that album. Like music I never would have listened to. Like now all of a sudden I like genres of music I didn't even know that I would like. And kids don't really get that anymore because Spotify tends to compile their new music for you based on what you like, not anything that you could experience new.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's pigeonholing everything that we listen to into something smaller.
Sometimes the Netflix algorithm does that. Like you'll watch a horror movie and then it's like, oh, you like horror movies? Here's 5 more. I'm like, I just watched a horror movie. I want to watch like a comedy or a sci-fi or something. Like show me like something independent, whatever it may be. Just give me something different. Just because I like horror doesn't mean I want to watch like horror back to back to back.
It's funny you say that because last night, me and my roommate, I was putting up Christmas decorations, decorating the tree, and we were watching the Princess Switch because we both seen the first 2 ones, and it's like it's light, fluffy. You have it in the background. Vanessa Hudgens, great. And so we watched the first one, and then we watched the second one, and we get done with the second one. Netflix's recommendation is for us to watch the first one. I'm like, we just back.
Yeah.
But Netflix is like, oh, what's the first one? There's a third one. Did it recommend that one?
Yeah.
I recommended we watch the first one. We're like, but we just watched it. How do you not get that?
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's really pigeonholing you into something tight.
Yeah, that's frustrating. And again, I understand, like, I'm not trying to, like, go back in time or whatever. It's just, we don't always take these moments to mourn what it is that we've lost because technology goes so quick, right? Like, we've gone from, like, the vinyl to cassette to CD to, like, and it just keeps going to MP3, and we've kind of gone back to vinyl, of course. But it's just, these things and these changes happen so rapidly, we never take a moment to just kind of like pause and like reflect on what it is that we've lost.
We don't. Well, you're right. We don't have the time to. We just don't have time because it's like what we lost. It's like you could almost say we're losing something every single day because everything changes. Like you said, it changes so fast these days. It's in our minds 1 minute and out of our minds the next minute. Like a news story that captured the entire nation a few weeks ago pops up again because of some new development, and I completely forgotten who that person was. That was like 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
because it moves fast. We don't have time to remember what we forgot. So what about you? Like what was your takeaway from
one highlight that was like I thought was really profound was Dave Chappelle did the opening speech for Jay-Z. He was the one who inducted Jay-Z into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Dave Chappelle said, and it's something that we don't really like talk about or articulate enough about, he said the way that white people listen to rap music is completely different than the way that black people listen to rap music. The way that they interpret the lyrics, all those kind of things. And I was like, that's a massive like observation that we kind of take for granted and we kind of gloss over, but it's like we were saying before with like things moving on. Like we need to stop for a couple of minutes and like acknowledge this because we're all listening to the same music, but we're not all like interpreting it the same way.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's like when he said that, I remember having a pause for a moment. I'm like, that's true, and that just seems obvious. But at the same time, it's like, and I think from my own perspective, being a white person, that probably is something that I just took for granted. That the way Black people interpret um, all that music. Jay Z came out of Brooklyn, a part of Brooklyn that was not a great neighborhood, and still is not the best area. And I live in, and it's funny because I can see from my backyard the house that Biggie Smalls grew up in, the apartment complex. I can see it from my backyard. It's one street over that
Mm-hmm.
Biggie Smalls grew up in. They renamed that stretch of St. James Christopher Wallace Way. At the very end of it, next to the main thoroughfare, right across the street, as a mural of him on the wall. And he grew up in a Brooklyn very similar to the one that Jay-Z grew up in, and I have no concept of that
Mm-hmm.
because the Brooklyn I'm in is worlds away from
Mm-hmm.
what they grew up in, and it's literally my backyard. And so it's like, so my interpretation of Brooklyn is different. And so like he talks so much about this area and where he came from and all that kind of stuff. And you know, like I love the song Empire State of Mind. I know all the words to that song. Some words I don't say, but I know all the words to that song. And
Mm-hmm.
my interpretation of it is like there are probably things in that song that I'm interpreting a certain way that if somebody in the Black community explained to me, oh, that's not at all what I thought that meant. So it's just a totally different viewpoint vibe, and it just kind of it also puts a lot of his music into perspective and just what he has done for the Black community and what he has done in general for hip hop and rap music, and just getting voices heard, being the kind of success that he is. It's unheard of.
I was gonna say, like in Empire State of Mind, there is a line. I should Google it properly, but Jay Z basically says if he's paying LeBron, I'm paying Dwayne Wade, and it's because drug prices are based on NBA jersey numbers on the street, and so he's not saying that he's going out to buy drugs. What he's basically saying is that he's so prominent he can get even a discount, like a Black Friday discount on drugs on the street. That's like the level of his fame compared to other rappers, right?
And million years that not that's that you literally just explained a lyric to me that I thought meant something else entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people just associate it with the basketball stuff, right? I know who LeBron James is, and Jay Z owned the Nets at the time, so I get it. Blah blah blah, and then they just kind of gloss over, like you said, certain words, certain phrases, and that's basically what he's saying. And it's a street culture and a street slang that like it's like poetry basically. You do have to interpret poetry, and I know like when we were in English class, the teacher would give us some dry like Yeats or something like this or wordsmiths or whatever, and you would gloss it over and you kind of just hand in the essay to get your C and then go on your way. But it's the same thing. You kind of have to unpack it. And Jay Z has a number of things like that that are actually like super packed.
I have a very specific set of Jay-Z songs that I know very well, and it's funny because several of them I do not know them in their original musical format, and that obviously is because of Linkin Park's Collision Course.
Mm-hmm.
They're Jay-Z. And I knew who Jay Z was before that, and I'd heard some of his songs. I'd heard No Problems. I knew the song.
Mm-hmm.
It's catchy as hell, regardless. But that was the first time I'd really been introduced to his music, where listening to the lyrics and hearing the lyrics, and still to this day, the stuff that I look at in those songs, I'm like, I have no idea that's what that means. And by the way, the line, if you're wondering if Jeezy's paying LeBron, I'm paying Dwayne Wade. I told you I know all the words to that song.
Yeah.
Um, so,
That's what he's saying. He's more prominent
but
than that guy than that other rapper because he can get basically a Black Friday discount on drugs on the street.
and see, I thought that actually had to do with like the this like the lifelong like I don't want to say collaboration, but like the kind of yeah, I guess like some sort of collab, like back and forth between hip hop and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it had some promotion. Like, and it's just something I didn't know about. I never in a million years knew that's what that line meant. Because I didn't, because that's not my world. I did not grow up in that world. I have not had to experience that world. And so, that's why I said, I'm like, I know all the words of the song, that I know that I know there are things in that that don't, I think mean something else entirely.
Yes, and that's why I
So,
like Dave Chappelle's observation, because I'm like, that's something that we don't really kind of talk about. Everybody, like you know Jay Z lyrics and songs and stuff, and a lot of people know Jay Z songs, but it's completely different than like Go-Gos. We all like you listen to Go-Go song, there isn't a lot of broad interpretations or things that you're kind of missing in Go-Go song, and it's
yeah.
not a bad thing or good thing. It's just what it is, and you can enjoy it, and like you can listen to Vacation, and you can dance, and you can have fun, and then you're done.
Mhm.
But there's certain things like certain lines, obviously in Jay Z songs, that like hold up, I gotta like sit down with this for a little bit because I gotta like work through it.
Yeah. It's actually funny you mentioned that, because one of the most misinterpreted lyrics of all time is actually from a go-go song. And it always makes like one of the top 10 lists of most misinterpreted, and it's "Our lips are sealed." It sounds like Alex the Seal, and you will never unhear that. You're welcome.
Okay.
So, um, but no, and of course, I had a moment like when they did that whole opening montage, that black and white montage for Jay Z. I was seriously waiting. I was like, because I was like, are they gonna have him? Are they gonna have him? I was waiting to see if Mike Shinoda was gonna be in it,
Mm-hmm.
because whole album, and I'm like, and he was close with, like, he was tight with them.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's literally, I don't know, a single person in the entire music industry that has any sort of bad word ever to say about any of the guys from Linkin Park, which is nice. But regardless, I was waiting, and that didn't happen. I was like, oh, okay, but they did show up in
The
the
featurette,
retrospect.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
course, I started like rocking out in my kitchen, as
Mm-hmm.
one does. But it's like, but they made a good point. Was he was changing landscapes, and I think, and I look back now at Collision Course, and I'm like, especially now that we're so far removed from when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
G was already famous, but was like at a somewhat of a, like, from what I understand, was somewhat of a tipping point in his career right around then. And Linkin Park had released their first two albums, and there was actually like a 4-year gap between Meteora and Minutes to Midnight, and that's actually when Collision Course came out during that time. But Jay Z was completely changing the way people looked at hip hop and rap music, and how they interpreted it, and what it could sound like, and what it could be. Linkin Park is the only band that survived the new metal craze, because they were also changing the landscape. They were taking approaches that nobody else was taking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, Jay Z is a musical genius. So is Mike Shinoda, in completely different genres. So I think that to have those two artists, of Linkin Park, Mike Shinoda, and then Jay Z over here, to have them create that. I mean, honestly, there was that whole like thing for a while of everybody doing mashup albums. Name another one for me. Name another one besides Collision Course.
The Danger Mouse one, the Gray album, where he mashed up Beatles and Jay Z's what's the Back in Black album? Not the Black album. Sorry, Jay Z's Black album and the Beatles White album. It's called the Gray album by
Yeah,
Modest
and
Mouse.
that's like, that's not, I mean, okay, technically, as a DJ it is, but I mean, this was Jay-Z and Linkin Park getting together. A lot of bands were doing that at the time. A lot of music artists were doing that, this mashup, and they were not the pioneers of it. Aerosmith and Run DMC did it back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I love that song.
Yeah.
I almost never always forget that song was like a Run DMC song first. I always forget that.
Mm-hmm.
Um but you know these two prolific artists who were also on like this like cusp of their careers, because the Linkin Park was just getting past the sophomore, not a sophomore slump, thank God. Jay Z was like going from like Jay Z to J fucking Z, and it's like, to have them come together and to look back now and to see the trajectory of both careers, I'm like, I there's very few, like I don't know enough about the hip hop world to be able to say who I think should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But if you'd asked me who in hip hop and rap should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he would have been the first person I said.
Mm-hmm.
I could think of a laundry list. I'm like, there's a laundry list who should be in there, or that deserve to be in there, whether they are now or not. But oh yeah, he would have been the first one I said. He's a
Yeah,
genius.
I like that point too because they also acknowledged like big pimping, specifically very like via Missy Elliott, and like big pimping is like, I suppose there, like, I'm just so used to it from rap music, but I suppose you could take away that it's misogynistic or it's whatever. It's very immature. It's a very immature perspective in terms of relationships and in terms of women. But you need that song because it's a mark on the wall, like it's a definitive mark, so that you know that when he's evolved and he's kind of gotten like past that, if that song's not there, there's no way to properly measure the growth of an artist. Like you said, it's one thing to change your sound, but it's another thing to change your perspective, to change the lyrics, to change the topics and things that you talk about. And you need to have certain
Mm-hmm.
songs like that, as offensive as they may be to certain people, because then you know that that person is growing and evolving. It's the same thing of like years and years ago, Howard Stern realized that like he'd kind of come to the end of like putting on like Playboy bunnies and like women like porno stuff, all that kind of stuff, and he started getting rid of a lot of that. And he then started going to therapy, and he started doing like really good interviews, and he also started reaching out to a lot of people that he offended, and he started to make apologies and stuff like this, and his show went in a different direction. But the problem is that the people who have never listened to the new version of the Howard Stern show remember only like the porno and the nudity and all the other stuff, and they just constantly put him in this box, and they haven't allowed him to grow and to change. When in fact, you don't stay on the air for like 20, 30 years without constantly growing and changing and evolving.
No, that's a good point. I'm like, you say the name Howard Stern, and like, there's a certain image that comes to mind. Same thing with like, oh my gosh, who's the TV personality? Chairs always get thrown. They have security. Jerry Springer.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people don't know there's actually like I think was he actually an attorney or just a politician? Like he was in politics
Oh, he was like something of
before.
Cincinnati, like mayor of Cincinnati or governor of Cincinnati or something like that.
But it's interesting because like you hear the name Jerry Springer and the only thing you think of is
Chair
chairs
throw.
being thrown
Yeah.
across.
And who's your daddy?
Yeah. And so, but he like his career was in an entirely different direction when he first started going.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, it's interesting, like you look at that kind of stuff and it's like you forget that a lot of these a lot of that stuff that they're doing is just a performance. They're just putting on a performance, I think the only time, they're not necessarily who you hear on the radio show, who you see on the TV show, who you associate them with.
Mhm.
Um, so, and same with Jay-Z, is like a lot of the stuff that was in his lyrics, but that was music at the time.
Yeah.
That's, and it, honestly, it still is a little bit, but I'd say in the last few years, is when you really started hearing changes in hip hop and rap music where they kind of started putting it in the back seat, calling every single girl, calling them all bitches and hoes and all that kind of stuff. And, it's like, I think one of the greatest rap lyricists of all time, I think is almost a better way to say it. Eminem. There are songs of his I cannot listen to.
Mhm.
Songs I like. His I knew the Eminem show. I knew that entire when I had that album memorized start to finish. And there's some songs I'm like, I haven't listened in a long time, so I don't remember all the lyrics, but I'm like, I've gone back and listened to it and I cannot listen to some of his songs, but you can still hear that you can still hear the genius behind what he has put together, what he's structured in these songs and the structure of the songs, you know, uh,
But again, he's evolved
so
as well too. And the things that he raps about now, like, you need to have those markers so that you know that he has grown and evolved, right? Like if he was just still putting out Eminem show like the third or fourth version of that album now, he really hasn't kind of grown. He would have just plateaued.
and that's true. I mean, it's like, and I don't necessarily think like that's the kind of music you have to put out to show that someone's grown. I mean,
Hmm.
there's lots of artists. don't do that, who haven't made music
For
that
sure.
talk about or anything like that, that you can also hear their growth. I mean, it's funny. It's like you look at some of these bands. I mean, like the Rolling Stones, who from I look at the Rolling Stones and I think back, because they inducted they had the drummer who just passed, but
Charlie.
I was yeah, Charlie, which is I shouted his name at my computer, and all of a sudden my roommate was like, "You call my name?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "I swear I heard my." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know. I did yell your name across the apartment, but it wasn't you. It was a different Charlie." So, but you look at the beginning of their career, and again, they literally look like an early Beatles and early Monkeys. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's how they came across, and so they're one of the greatest rock bands in history. And if you think about them now, you think of what Mick Jagger looks like now, and you think about what Mick Jagger looked like when they first started. I'm like, that's not the same person.
Mhm.
Literally, that's not the. I'm pretty sure that they just got someone who looked like him, and then he's just different.
Yeah, Paul is dead.
So, but they're all that. Like, I mean, I could, you know, there I could go back and continue to talk about Linkin Park and how their music grew, but I will say that for another day because I need to spend at least one day not talking about them.
All right, but you are free now to talk about Foo Fighters. We have covered a little bit of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So if you want to get into, because you were talking about the Stones and the Beatles a little bit, so Paul McCartney obviously introduced or inducted Foo Fighters. What is the connection between Paul McCartney and Foo Fighters?
Yeah, I know they know each other, but at the same time, I'm like, that whole speech, I was even like, why is Paul McCartney doing this?
Yeah.
But started going into this whole about his I am certain this is probably a conversation they got drunk over once. Um, but his musical trajectory from the Beatles and then post Beatles are
Into
like
Wings.
identical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was making jokes about, was Dave Grohl stalking him because they started out in these bands and then tragedy struck and the bands broke up for whatever reason, and then he's like, well, he moves on, he decides he's going to start his own band. He's like, I'm going to do a band I play literally every single instrument. I got to give a name to the band, so it's not just Paul McCartney. So he calls it Wings. Dave Grohl's like, I can't just put my name on it. I'm going to call it Foo Fighters. And then where they went from there and how their careers grew. And Dave Grohl, his career in general is just such an interesting. I mean, yeah, Paul McCartney, guitarist, he could sing, all that kind of stuff, but that was what he was in the Beatles, and that's what he was after the Beatles. Dave Grohl, on the other hand, Dave Grohl was the drummer for Nirvana,
Mm-hmm.
and then he became his primary instrument is playing guitar loudly
Mm-hmm.
and in such an awesome the you so he went from being the background of a band that nobody really thinks about. They do more these days than they used to, but to the lead singer and lead guitarist of one of the greatest, he went from one of the greatest, alt bands of all time, their whole career cut short, to one of the absolute greatest modern rock bands. He will be he the Foo Fighters will be up there with the Stones. He'll be up there with, Eagles, with the Beatles, like all that, like not just because they're inducted, but because the what they have done for the musical landscape, the what Dave Grohl has done.
Mm-hmm.
He's arguably one of the greatest drummers of my generation.
Yeah.
And and that's not even the instrument he plays, you know. In fact, I still think I'm still the drum off that he got into. Oh, why am I blanking on her name right now?
Oh, the little girl, the
I've
little black girl.
show that they did. And I mean, she was at, if you remember, I put the one song that she wrote for him, which is just really cute. I put on my, like, well, it's not just cute, it's awesome. Nandy Bichelle, that's right,
Yeah.
Nandy Bichelle. So she was the very first time she ever actually met Dave Grohl in person and then performed that same day happened to be at the Foo Fighters concert I was at. So I
Mm-hmm.
got to see her jam with him.
The Hollywood
And it's
Bowl,
funny
right?
because, like, no, the LA Forum.
LA Forum.
Um, Yeah. So it's just, you look at this insanely prolific drummer who's a lead guitarist and lead singer for the band that he's been in for 25 plus years. And then what this girl who also plays every instrument wants to battle him on is the drums.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you just look at all of these different elements that he's brought together, these songs that he's written, this music he's put together, and then this band that he's created, and how he just the talent that he brought into this band that is still there, to this day. I mean, they did lose the guitarist. I'm
Pat
blanking on
Smear.
his name.
Pat Smear.
Is that his name? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But but I'm like, that's their band. I'm like, it's just, the Foo Fighters. And so I was so excited. I was so excited to see them get inducted. I'll admit, I was like, I want to watch it because it's the Foo Fighters. It's Foo Fighters. I did not know Jay-Z was going to be on it.
Yeah, it's times like these that it's good that you watch the whole thing.
I was like, I was like, Tina Turner not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I was like, I didn't. What? She's not. What? Like the few of them that were, I'm like, how are they not already? I was so thrown by some of the people who were inducted this year, and I was like, maybe also because like Tina Turner's been around since what, the 60s, 70s, and she just got inducted this year, and the Foo Fighters have been around since the late 90s, and they're being inducted. But then again, that goes back to the whole argument about there's not enough women being inducted. But that's, they're getting better about that every year, so that's not a conversation to have. But it's still, I was just like, it's like those people when they get on a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and they're like, how did they not have one already? What do you mean they're only getting it right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's just shocking. Although the way people get stars on Hollywood Walk of Fame, it's not totally surprising.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
a
am.
check.
It is literally back to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. That's
Mm-hmm.
literally what it is.
Yes.
And they do have to have a petition worth of signatures. I forget how many signatures it is, but it's just a check to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame where it goes to like a whole series of whatever. They're just like, here, have some money, give them a star. Okay.
I want to
So
with the Foo Fighters though. I find one of the things I find fascinating, and even before Nirvana, they both bands, and I don't know what it is about Dave Grohl, but it's this crossover appeal. Black people love the Foo Fighters. Black people love Nirvana, and I'm not saying like stereotypically that just black people just listen to like rap music or whatever. Obviously, they're like everybody else. They just listen to a lot of music, but those two bands specifically, when those like Monkey Wrench or like Smells Like Teen Spirit or one of those things, like come on, black people love these bands. They love Dave Grohl, and it's a weird crossover thing where like other bands that are just as big haven't necessarily done like Soundgarden didn't have that same kind of crossover appeal. Other bands from the era, Pearl Jam doesn't have that big kind of crossover appeal. And it's interesting. I don't know what it is. It's just an observation. But for some reason, Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters and both Nirvana managed to cross over.
um I honestly, I have nothing to say to that because I have no idea why. Like I don't. I'm like I'm trying to think, but honestly, I'm like also the wrong person to ask. I can't sit here and go, I know why black people like them because I know how black people think. I absolutely do not know
So
any way,
like
shape, or form.
a recent
That.
example of what I'm talking about is like I watched Dave Chappelle. He has a documentary out called Untitled, and it was basically the first year that we had COVID back in 2020. All that
Yeah.
summer, he was putting on shows at this farm, this cornfield in his near the farm that he lives on in Ohio, in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And of course, as he was putting them on in the summer, he got to July 4 and he had this big show with Tiffany Haddish and Erica Badu. Common was there.
Yeah.
Questlove was there. It was all these like big prominent people, and it was of course it was a 4th of July party, whatever. And so they did a whole bunch. They all performed their all like music or their comedy acts or whatever it may be, and then it just kind of like disintegrated from like performing into this party. And one of the DJs, put on "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and Questlove was doing the drums that Dave Grohl does, and he does the drums, and all the black entertainers were going nuts, and they were singing the song at the top of their lungs, and it's just like weird, like they're just in this giant cornfield, just belting out "Smells Like Teen Spirit" with Questlove on the drums. It was a great scene, but it's also like a really weird scene.
I would absolutely have loved to have seen that. I'm trying to picture it in my head, and I'm like, although I did have a similar experience, nothing not like that, but just a genre crossover at a concert that I thought was one of the weirdest things I'd ever seen, but was also awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've ever told this. I was at a. Did I ever tell the story when I was at the Maroon 5 concert? I went with a friend of mine. She was a big Maroon 5 fan. I like their music, but I'm like, it's not. I would not have voluntarily bought a ticket to Maroon 5. They were not a band I cared one way or another about singing concert. And the concert was fine.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Levine, when his vocal cords are completely warmed up and he speaks, he sounds exactly like Mickey Mouse. I could not unhear it all night long. Their drummer at the time had broken his arm, and so he wasn't on the drums that night.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the night, when they went to do their encore, he came out, arm all casted up and stuff, and jumps on the microphone. And Adam goes back and gets on the drums. I don't even ask me who was filling in for drums, and I have no clue. But he gets back on the drums. And remember Maroon 5. Maroon 5 has a specific sound to them that is very like rock and roll, like aughts, early, 2000 aughts rock and roll light. It's a very specific sound.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he gets back on, and their drummer gets on lead microphone, and they proceed to perform a kick ass version of Highway to Hell.
Wow. All right then.
And I was like, and everybody was going nuts. Really sucks though, because like this is back in the day when like phone cameras were obviously like crap, like way over 10. I tried to record it and I was so bummed out because it just sounded mostly like you could not feel it. I could get a good recording now happening, but you couldn't feel it. Like it was just sounding like noise. I was so bummed. I'm like, yeah, but it was so awesome. And I awful version. But it's like you don't see stuff like that very often at concerts where they do such a large deviation on something and because you don't know how the crowd's going to react. Like you just said, it completely like blew your mind because you're watching Smells Like Teen Spirit, a crowd that was not there to jam to Smells Like Teen Spirit. So
but it's like Erykah Badu. Like you think like Erykah Badu sits and listens to "Smells Like Teen Spirit." She knew the lyrics. She was mouthing along. Tiffany Haddish was mouthing along. Dave Chappelle was mouthing along, and Questlove knew the drums, or at least he was like me. He's talented enough that maybe he was kind of just going with the song. But you know what I mean? Like you guys have listened to this song enough that you know the lyrics. It's one thing when you hear the opening, like the drums and all that stuff at the beginning of "Smells Like Teen Spirit." It's an iconic opening. And you know the song, but it's another thing to actually know the lyrics and to sing along with it,
Yeah. Hold on a second. I was going to say something and it completely left my brain. Must not have been that important. It was about what we were just talking about. It's gone. So, I mean, but there was, I don't know. Okay, I will tell you this. This is actually the first time I've ever watched the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony all the way through. Like I've never sat and watched it. I usually just watch like clips on YouTube or something.
Yeah. This was a good year though.
There's a lot of like inductees that were that weren't just performers or like how they're inducted and all that kind of stuff. Just I didn't know that's how it was done. So it was fun to watch just because the Early Influence Award, the Musical Excellence Award, like all this kind of stuff, and their contributions to music was it was fun learning like where all this stuff comes from. That I like a good example is when they're talking about Kraftwerk.
Kraftwerk is amazing.
Yeah, it never occurred to me ever that all of that 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 robotic sound, like all of that that kind of music would and I didn't like think about it being in the background of all of these songs that they were going through, and then I'm like, and then to find out that it was like one band, like one group that influenced a massive group of hip hop artists,
Mm-hmm.
and their sound that. So I guess that actually ties into this whole thing we're talking about. I had no clue. Now I have to go and listen to them. Ooh, I should see some Spotify just as themselves because I'm curious. But yeah, I'd heard their name before, but I was like, again, it's not anything that I really thought one way or another about, like, you know. But then to hear how they'd had such an influence,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
fantastic.
you can see like even just something as simple as Daft Punk, right? Like you can draw a
Mm-hmm,
clear line between Kraftwerk and Daft Punk, uh,
mm-hmm,
and like, but that's the beauty of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and this whole like music genre in general. Is like how do you get from Kraftwerk to Daft Punk? Because there's other bands in the middle, like they had the little featurette with Depeche Mode. Lots of
yeah,
bands like New Order were big synth guys as well. There's like lots of little things, but Kraftwerk also had a lot of like melodies and voices and stuff. And there's like little bits of like Beach Boys stuff when you listen to it. Just how they kind of layer sounds and how they layer melodies is which you don't normally like you don't think that music would evolve from like Beach Boys to Kraftwerk, but here we are.
mm-hmm. It's I I love finding out about that kind of stuff. And I'm kind of kicking myself now. I'm from a music family, not professionally, but my dad is one of the biggest guitar collections I've ever seen live, and he plays every single one of them. And there's a million different types of guitars in there. There's bass, there's
Mm-hmm.
there's electric, there's acoustic, he's got a banjo, like, all kinds of stuff. And he plays or did, before he's just older and really can't play them anymore. But my brother learned to play the drums. My brother learned to play guitar. I play piano. I'm a singer in the family. I'm like, we're all influenced. And if there's, and I know I've mentioned on this show before that, you know, the thing that kept me and my brother from killing each other when we were growing up is our common ground where Star Wars learned. But it's like me and my dad and my brother. It's just I'm such a different animal than them. That it's like we never, the three of us, like, or at least me to them, never really understood each other. Me growing up in the day. But if there's one thing that we've had in common, it's our love of music and the the different types of music we love and why we love it and how it's not because I like this song and it's pretty and it's catchy, but the things that we know about it going in, the things that we learn, um, you know, so um watching this, like I said, I'm kicking myself because there's so many things I learned about music that I didn't know, and I'm wondering, okay, like if I'd actually, if this was a thing I watched every year, how much do I think I would have learned in years past about influences like that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. Things that talking about Jay-Z's early career and his influences and how he got started and who influenced him and who he influenced, like all this kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I know Jay-Z and I really like his music and I think he's an absolute genius top to bottom, but like there's a lot of stuff in there about just his journey and the where that all ties in, things that are normally like aren't important to me. That's the kind of stuff I like to know. So now I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna have to watch it every year now. Just
Yeah,
gonna have to make the list,
yeah,
and I might
that's
go back and watch old.
yeah. It's the thing with music because a lot of music is like currently what's happening now. Have you heard the new Adele? That's how we kind of talk about music, right? And it's this
Yeah.
pressure to like quote unquote stay on top of it. Like if you haven't heard the new Adele, like what you're doing with your whole life. That's how we kind of talk. But when you like watch something like this, you get this kind of historical context. You realize that Daft Punk just didn't come out of left field. Even Radiohead to a certain degree too. You can hear some of the Kraftwerk stuff in Radiohead, right? Like you
Yeah.
see how, like I said, how did we get from like Kraftwerk to Daft Punk? Like even this induction ceremony, it started with Carole King, and you can hear some Carole King in like she's like kind of almost like the pre Adele, right? Just kind of like
Mhm.
this voice and this like talking about relationships and the songs that she has. You can almost see like you can draw a line between like I feel the earth move to rolling in the deep. Granted, Adele is a much more of
Yeah.
a bigger powerhouse and all kinds of things like that, but you can start to see how we got to this point, these little gradual evolutions the way that like dinosaurs had like scales and had all these things, and then they ended up like fish or something like that. It's these tiny little evolutions, and that's what I think this show is great at because it gives you that historical context. You forget these things didn't just come out of a void. They just weren't birthed
Yeah.
whole. Radiohead didn't just come out of nowhere. Radiohead comes from a long, noble tradition.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right about that. And uh, it's just the way music influences music influences music. You mentioned Rolling in the Deep, and you mentioned Radiohead. And Radiohead's their most prolific album, it says, is Kid A.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I said that, and I don't really know if this song is on. Um, what album is okay? Really, I'm thinking of Creep. But I can't remember if it's on that album or not. Now I'm blanking. I'm like, I'm going this whole thing about the album, and I could be wrong. But
Okay, computer.
the song, it's my my roommate was looking for a version of that he could sing live that was in a particular key for this past weekend, and I cannot tell you in the last few weeks how many versions of that song I've heard. Really good versions. And people that get influenced by this music and then go in and do these cover songs that are completely different vibe, or just like it's an elevation, or just like a great interpretation of this music. And it's like these artists, whether they're famous or not, or whether you found like a really good cover, like they're influenced by these artists. It influences them and influences their music. And you get these opportunities to see these artists who have a certain way about, have a certain approach, taking influences that may have nothing to do with their sound, and kind of merging them and making it their own. And I am, if there's I am fascinated. I love. I have one of my biggest playlists on Spotify outside of my Park one, which has days worth of music on it, is is my cover music
Mm-hmm.
playlist. Because of that, I love songs and how these these artists who are influenced by music and how they make that their own. And it's like you said, it's like it evolves into something. Um, and I'm just like, uh, you know, I the reason I also mentioned Adele though is because he I'm sorry, I can't stop talking about Linkin Park. Chester used to randomly Linkin Park lead singer of Linkin Park, known for a particular sound, used to do, and I heard it once, "Rolling in the Deep" live.
Oh
That was
wow.
like one of their side songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can find it on. Actually, I I got Spotify open right now. I think one of their live versions is on Spotify, but if not, it's definitely on YouTube. And anybody who's listening, I highly recommend you go listen to it, because it's his interpretation with his sound.
Mm-hmm.
The Maroon 5 going out and performing Highway to Hell, like all of how all of these artists are just influenced by everyone around them. And like you said, it's all, you can almost say it's all very, very nepotistic, and it's just like it's all within this tight community, and it's created vastly different styles of music across the globe,
Yeah,
because everyone is influenced by everybody.
music is one of the things where like almost everybody consumes music because a song is generally 3 minutes or 5 minutes, unless it's like Stairway to Heaven or something. But a song is generally 3 to 5 minutes. So everyone's listened to some Adele, everyone's listened to some like Foo Fighters, you name different bands, Radiohead, Daft Punk. There's songs that you kind of know and you hear, especially on the radio and stuff like that. Whereas like other types of pop culture, like a movie is 2 hours or can be longer. A novel can take sometimes a week or a couple of weeks to read if you're a slow reader, right? Like as you go up the ladder of consuming pop culture, music is always one of the easiest things, and that's why it's a universal language because it's literally 3 minutes. There isn't like even if you listen like a song for like 30 seconds or 50 seconds, and you're like, I don't like this beat or whatever, and then you go on to the next thing or whatever, you still kind of start to know that song.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Um, I looked, I could not find it, but why do I know? Maybe it's just because I happen to have that song, and I assume it's on Spotify.
Well,
But I have so much music all over the place. I don't know where I have it. I just know I have.
we
Uh,
can put a link in it when you find it. Then.
I am. I'm gonna send it out to the. I'm gonna send it out to the Twitterverse because it's like it's. I just highly recommend. Just there's other ones that I could like there's other songs I could recommend, stuff where people were influenced by Linkin Park and did their music, but not and then songs that have nothing to do with any of that. Like for example, I'm trying to pull up um what's the name of my playlist? It's like okay, my computer's just being dumb. I would there it is, Cover Me Softly. There's a cover of where is it? 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 Nope, nope, nope. Oh, that's one. If you get a chance, Kingsley and Perdomo, it disappears randomly from Spotify and then pops back. I was trying to find a different version of this song and I tripped across this and it is one of the greatest covers I've ever heard. Kingsley and Perdomo. I will send it to you and then I'm sending it out to the Twitterverse. It is a bluesgrass cover version of Staying Alive.
Ooh, okay. All right, let's
Yeah.
fire that up. All right.
Yeah, and then Chase Holfelder.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one I was looking for. Does one of my absolute favorite covers of all time, which is a cover of "Every Breath You Take" by the Police. But it takes the music and turns it on what it actually sound like, which is super stalkery,
Mm-hmm.
and so the song is very haunting and kind of creepy. And it's such a it's a the way the song builds up as such a powerful take on that song. And that's one. And I like I said, I love and I've listened to some of his other music. I do not have a single song of his on anything else because the rest of his music is not. But that song is fantastic. Or when Disturbed did The Sound of Silence,
Mm-hmm.
like that's I just there's so many great covers of. I love hearing those kinds of influences. I should really just send you this whole playlist because it's amazing. I
This
like to
does
think
sound
so.
amazing.
I like
Well,
very fabulous playlist.
we can maybe do a cover episode for one of these on Tuesday in upcoming, like probably in the next few weeks or so. So we can add that to the list. We can discuss covers. Because there are, like you
We
said,
can't.
some really great ones, and they do totally sometimes will completely change your perspective of the song. I'm also a
Mm-hmm.
big fan of, like, when a song comes out, the original song has like a boy singer and then like a female sings it or something like that, like when they switch the gender,
Yeah.
because then it adds a whole extra level of like something, like it changes it,
Yeah.
that perspective changes it. I like that move as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I'm definitely a big fan of that sort of thing. I'm trying to think of one song in particular where who was it? It was a song from the 80s, and it's gonna hit me at the most random time. It was like, a, it was a man. The cover of it was done by a male, but he didn't change. I can hear it in my head. God, it's gonna drive me crazy. It is from the 80s. He didn't change the
Oh, the
gender in the song.
yeah, I like that too when they do that as well.
Oh, God, there's one song, and everybody knows it. So of course I can't remember it. Of course I can't. Of course.
All right. Well,
Um.
we'll wrap this up now so you can kind of Google. But the 2021 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. It's a clumsy title. It's terrible for social media. It is on HBO Max on demand. It is long. It's almost about 4 hours, but it is well worth it. And this was like a really good year. Like we barely acknowledged Carole King. Gil Scott Heron is a fantastic poet.
Okay.
Tina Turner, as you mentioned, and of course
Mhm.
with the ones we already mentioned, which is Go-Gos, Foo Fighters. So there's like a nice, and of course Jay Z. There's a nice broad
Mhm.
range of like music and influences and all kinds of stuff happening. It's a good party. So again, if you haven't been to a concert or been to a live show for a little while, this would be a good way to kind of like tide you over, like a little snack before you go to a live meal. That's my recommendation.
Yeah. Mhm. Absolutely. I totally agree. All right.
So that's it. So next week, we will again be returning on Tuesday at 4 o'clock and be discussing the first two episodes of Hawkeye, the new Disney Plus Marvel show. Of course, the two
Mhm.
episodes drop on Wednesday. This coming up Wednesday. It's six
Tomorrow.
episodes, I think, for the whole first season with
Yeah.
Hawkeye, and he's now joined by Kate Bishop. and Echo is the new superhero. She's a deaf superhero. She's kind of floated around in like Daredevil comics and stuff like that. Anyways, so we'll get into Hawkeye, and we can see if we can, I guess, hit a bullseye with that episode. That was a terrible pun.
Oh my God. Yes, but terrible pun that makes them the best puns.
There you go. On that happy note, I've been Sammy.
I've been Stephanie. I really got nothing extra to add today. I mean, we all know that I'm a music nut, and I really can't add to that. Anyways, I'm Stephanie.
All right, that's a good way to end it. We covered quite a bit, but there's always room for more. Thank you for hanging out.
Peace out, everyone.